Welcome to Stemiverse podcast episode 25. In this episode, Peter and Marcus talk with Kieran Nolan. This episode is special because while it might not seem that it's about education, it actually is. In this discussion, Kieran takes us for a ride in the world of networks, blockchains, total online transparency, and 10-year-old students creating their own cryptocurrencies. Stay with us, it'd be worth it. Kieran Nolan is a qualified network engineer, certified cloud migration architect, and educational technologist with certifications from Google, Microsoft, and Cisco, and a degree in network engineering. He's got over 10 years of experience working in schools from K to 12. Under Kieran's leadership, Wooranna Park Primary School in Victoria, Australia has established itself as an exemplar in introducing the digital world to students. The school has led the way in establishing a 24/7 international virtual learning environment in Minecraft, Victoria's first CoderDojo, Australia's first Immersive Education Club, the world's youngest Cisco class, and the very first school on the blockchain. This is Stemiverse podcast episode 25. Welcome to Stemiverse, the podcast that helps educators become awesome at teaching STEM, be it at home or in the classroom. I'm Peter Dalmaris, and with my co-host Marcus Schappi, our mission is to bring you the experiences of educators, students, and stakeholders who strive every day to make the teaching and learning of science, technology, engineering, mathematics, and art better. Hey Marcus, welcome back.
Hey Peter, how are you?
Oh, all good. It's been a very hectic day, but finally I've been waiting for this for a long time to talk to Kieran about Bitcoin and blockchain in education. And to our audience, if that sounds like mumbo-jumbo talk, just stay with us. We'll explain what Bitcoin is, what blockchain is, and how that relates to education. So Kieran, really thank you for joining us on Stemiverse podcast. We planned this a while ago, and finally it's happening today. When I heard that you do Bitcoin in schools and blockchain in schools, that was very intriguing for me. I've been monitoring the world of Bitcoin and blockchain for a while now, but I never thought that it's got applications in education. So can't wait to hear.
So what is this Bitcoin thing?
Well, did you want to sort of jump into how it relates to education, or did you want to sort of talk about the fundamentals of Bitcoin first?
Actually, who are you?
Yeah, who are you? That's a good point.
That's a good question, yeah. So Mark, do you want a bit about my background?
Yeah, a bit about your background and how all that brings you to where you are now. That would be awesome.
Probably the best place to start is a story actually that myself and a principal tell to visitors when they usually come through about my education in high school. So my parents sent me to a private school, and in around, I think it was year 8 or year 9, the school introduced a really hardcore computer network with really awesome computers, and like all the kids really excited to like start using them because we didn't really have anything before that. And then they proceeded to teach us Excel spreadsheets, like the most boring stuff you could possibly imagine. It's like amazing network.
I'll find which school actually?
So this is De La Salle. I don't know if you're familiar with them, but it's a Catholic private school in Melbourne.
Okay.
Yeah, they were pretty cool. But anyway, so myself and a few of my friends got access to these computers, and like what that did by introducing the hardware in the school was give us access to a network. So we ended up hacking the school server, and we set up a Quake server, and I became surrogate admin for about 60 or so kids getting connected to that server. And then what that sort of told me was like, what's this IP? What's an IP address? Like, what's subnetting? Like, how does this network work? Oh my God, like maths has an actual application now. Like before then I didn't sort of care. So that's been my journey ever since then. So I sort of went on from there to work at obviously into games. So I managed the EV Games for a number of years while I was studying at Swinburne. So I did my network engineering degree and did my CCNP, like my Cisco CCNP as part of that degree.
Cisco? Yep.
Yeah. And then started working with the Catholic Education Office, like for their network, so between about 5 schools. And then from there, that's where I met Matt Richards, who you guys interviewed. And we actually created one of the first schools in the cloud kind of before Google Apps. So we were using like Dropbox, and we weren't paperless. Like this was like 10 years ago, which is pretty cool.
So what's the school in the cloud?
So basically we went one-to-one devices, and every student with a device, so we didn't need to print out worksheets and hand them out. We put everything in Dropbox. Then we moved to a school up in Port Macquarie, St. Columba, and we went completely in the cloud there. So we used Google Apps sort of ubiquitously across the school, K-12, and did a massive migration. So that was huge. And then I came back to Melbourne and found Wooranna Park. Actually, somebody tweeted me an article that the principal wrote, and the title was "What if Walt Disney built a school?" And I was like, "Wow, this place seems pretty cool." So I went and checked it out, and the principal hit it off. And for the last 4 years or so, we've been doing some pretty cool, actually going on 5 years now, been doing some pretty cool stuff, and we've created the first school on the blockchain, which is really, really exciting because it's, I think the biggest thing for me is looking at like a computer network and looking at like authenticated data and looking at something like proof of existence, which is what the blockchain allows you to do, and then implementing that in schools. And we can sort of break that down. But that's my history anyway.
So from a school in the cloud, you now move a school to the blockchain. So I think we're going to have to explain what a blockchain is.
I think so. So I think the best way to think about it is at the moment, do you guys use Facebook?
Yep.
Okay. So Facebook or Google or whatever, pick your poison. All really cool services, work pretty well, but they're all centralized. So think of like a hub and spoke, so central server, and everyone's sort of talking to that server one by one, sort of thing all around it. If that server goes down, that network goes down. So say you've got a school and you have one server, that server goes down, everything sort of dies in the school. This same sort of thing happens with these online services, so like anything that's in the cloud, so like Facebook or whatever. If, say, Zuckerberg disagrees with your politics, they can just take your stuff down on Facebook. Or same with YouTube. If Google disagrees with your politics, or Twitter, blah, 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 the same journalists have this stuff taken off Twitter.
And that's because they own the data, right? The data that describe, say, political positions in the databases, which they have total access and control.
That's right. So that's all centralized systems, and they work pretty well. But like I said, if you sort of disagree with them, like we've seen all these journalists and all the rest of the data taken away from them. Yep. We moved from these centralized systems to decentralized networks. So have you guys ever used torrents before?
Yeah.
Only to download legal Linux
stuff
distributions.
Legal stuff. Yeah.
But we'll have to explain what that is.
The Game of Thrones, anyone?
I paid a lot of money for that, actually. No, it's true.
I think it was the most torrented TV show ever. But it is a legitimate services. Like you can download Linux distributions and all different things using torrent networks.
So for our audience, what is a torrent? Because see, we're going down the rabbit hole now. To explain blockchain, we'll have to explain torrents.
Maybe we'll just say it's where you get movies off the back of a truck on the internet.
But I think the idea with torrents is that it's a single file eventually that is assembled on your own computer, but the various bits that make up that file come from many different places around the internet. Is that a fair description for what a torrent is?
100%. Yep.
It doesn't come from a single server, it comes from potentially thousands of different fragments. Computers.
Yeah, could be millions all over the world. So that's the decentralized network. And now we have a thing called the blockchain. So the blockchain is the underlying technology to Bitcoin. and a whole bunch of other altcoins and different cryptocurrencies and all these different networks, Hyperledger and from IBM and all Microsoft, you're getting into it, everyone. But basically, a blockchain is, instead of having fragments of those files, you have the whole file replicated across millions of computers, or potentially millions of computers. So you have, it gets a bit in depth, like you have miners and nodes, and like we've been studying that with the kids, and we're actually building our own nodes here, but you kind of don't have to know about that to understand the difference between the three. So you have centralized, decentralized, that's the torrents, where you have fragments of the files, and then distributed, with those files are replicated completely all over the network. So that's why it's so cool, because now you can have, like I mentioned before, a thing called proof of existence, whereas we never had anything like that with the old network.
Is it proof of existence or is it proof of work? Are they different things or are they the same thing?
Maybe.
They're two different things. So proof of work is more to do with the miners, and that gets a bit more complex. But proof of existence, I think everyone can kind of grasp, and that's the thing that I think relates most to education. And it's essentially where you have so say you come up with, say on this podcast now, we came up with an invention, and we're like, oh my God, we want to patent that invention. How do we go about that? Now, historically, you go to these central authorities and go, can I please patent this, and pay money or whatever. But now with the blockchain, we could go, okay, cool. We've got this idea. We're going to put it on the blockchain, authenticated with millions of computers all around the world, time-stamped at this time. This is ours.
Right.
And so if you think about that, you could do, now you can come up with an invention. You can take a photo. You can do your homework. You can do everything, and it's authenticated that it's actually you who did that at that time with a private key. So it's super exciting.
Right.
So instead of proof of work, it's proof of homework.
Proof of homework, yeah.
And the miners aren't Bitcoin miners, they're youngsters. Different type of miner.
Oh, right.
Sorry, bad jokes.
The mining work.
As soon as you become a father, the jokes just become terrible.
Lost our sense of humor.
Yes.
Or actually changed. Right. So I think the Bitcoin is the most, it's in the news. It's an implementation of the blockchain that people are more familiar with, even if they don't quite understand what the Bitcoin is. It's just you hear it on the news. But what you're saying is that the technology behind the Bitcoin has got applications far away from finance and payment systems to anything that requires proof of something having been done in the past. And it's, I think you called it decentralized. Is that decentralized and distributed? Distributed. And distribution means that everybody has got a copy of the proof as well. You don't have to ask somebody to provide proof, right? It's on your computer if you have downloaded the blockchain, which is publicly available.
Exactly right.
So can you give us some examples of other applications of the blockchain? Outside of education and finance, who else might be interested in something like that?
I can give you hundreds.
Let's go for three.
Yeah. Well, I've had some really interesting conversations with some of the kids looking at some of the tech behind it. So like coming up with different inventions and different ideas, like to sort of like this just to give you like background of the school, like the pedagogical practices of this school are a little bit different to other schools. So the kids at 10 years old are quite mature because they do like Socratic circles and they do Enigma missions. So that's like basically self-directed learning. So projects that they work on for up to 2 years, everything from like Einstein's equations to anything you can think of. So when I have conversations about like the applications of the blockchain, I get quite mature sort of responses, like more so than you would think from your average sort of 10, 11-year-old. But things like looking at water filtration. So I think the new Lego Robotics team, like the new map has come out. So they're looking at like the whole thing is about, how does water get filtered and how does it all work? Well, we're talking with the kids, like we were saying, okay, well, how could we implement the blockchain to help with water filtration? So instead of like when you turn the tap on and the person drinking it being the tester to see if that water's clean or not, surely we could have technology that could do a better job than that. So we're thinking, instead of having transactions, you have every time the tap is turned on, you have like a Raspberry Pi device that authenticates that water is clean, and the transaction is the person turning the tap. So then you have a network of houses turning their taps, all authenticating that the water is clean. And if one of them comes up, say, red, it goes, oh, nope, this is not authenticating with the rest of the network, then everybody gets a warning sort of thing. So that's one application, like a potential one that doesn't have a monetary aspect to it.
So just to summarize that, so that the taps equipped with the sensors and the Raspberry Pis produce blocks that become part of the blockchain, the public blockchain of, say, water quality in the area, potentially a whole country. And that because that's public data, I suppose, in the blockchain, it can be read by all other taps, and therefore it can become an early warning system about water quality.
Yep. And it's transparent as well. I think that's the key behind the blockchain. So
transparent, you mean that it's not actually? I'll allow you to explain. What do you mean by transparent?
So if you probably need a visualization, I suppose. But if you type into Google like real-time Bitcoin, there's a whole bunch of websites that show you real-time transactions happening all over the world. So you'll see one fly past the screen, and that could be a transaction between like me and you guys now, or me and the person sitting next to me, or you guys and someone over in China, and the network doesn't know where you guys are, but it's transparent, meaning that everybody can see that these two parties are a peer-to-peer network. These two parties had a transaction between each other. So same implications for the water or the water filtration concept. So it's because it's transparent, everybody can see in the network. Okay, cool.
Because you mentioned real-time Bitcoin and what transparency means, so I'm looking at that website that you mentioned, and it really has real-time data on what is happening in the Bitcoin world. So what the exchange rate is, and that changes almost by the second. How much power is consumed by all the various Bitcoin activity around the world. How much money is being sent right now, estimated money sent, and how many Bitcoins are in circulation. I suppose Bitcoins increase in numbers as they're being mined or created inside computers, and it's about 16,630,250 Bitcoins. So that's what you mean, like all that information is publicly available, and it's extracted by just looking at the blockchain, which everybody has access to.
Yep, exactly right. And I mean, and it's pretty exciting. Like when you look at something like this, as opposed to say like the alternative being fiat currency, I suppose, where it's all kind of cloak and dagger. Nobody knows what's going on. Like this is completely transparent, so you can see what's happening all over the world.
Somebody just sent $74,000 worth of Bitcoin to somebody.
US
dollars. Yeah, it's amazing. Yeah.
So. What I'd like to know is, how does this scale? Because I can imagine that the more popular the network becomes, you're keeping a local copy of the ledger. The computing power and the network that you'd need to have to be able to, I guess, stay current with the ledger would be, going exponentially up. And then you get into the situation where, I guess, only a large organization, well, like a bank, could actually do this. So how do they get around that?
The blockchain will be so big that only a large organization will be able to host it.
Yeah.
Well, there's a bit of a debate about that, huge debate about that at the moment. So there's SegWit 2, Bitcoin Gold, and Bitcoin Cash, which are like all different forks of the original blockchain sort of happening at the moment. It gets quite complex. So there's like some people saying that the block sizes need to be bigger. Some people saying we can do segregated witness, so transactions basically off the blockchain. And yeah, it's a bit all over the place, but it's kind of exciting at the same time because people are coming to a consensus as to how we sort of move forward and how it scales. But in terms of like how this sort of can compete against say banks or the current system, I've got an awesome story from last week. So my folks have just moved back from Ireland, back to Australia to live. So they sort of moved over 2 years. They've come back here, and I think they're going to stay for a while, sort of between here and Europe. But they needed a car, so I had a look online and found I drive a smart car, so I love smart cars. So I was like, all right, I'll see if I can find you guys a smart car. Found one, and I was like, all right, let's go get it. So went to go pick it up. Went to do a bank transfer. There's a daily limit of $1,000. Went to try PayPal. There's a limit on that. Tried our credit cards. I tried my mum's PayPal. That didn't work. So I was like, okay, have you got a computer upstairs? And the guy was like, yeah. It's like, all right, let's go upstairs. So sat him down, taught him how Bitcoin worked. And after about an hour of going back and forth, saying, oh, can I trust this, whatever, I bought my parents a car with Bitcoin.
Wow.
I was so excited. I was like, oh my. So for less than 1 BTC, I was actually going to buy my parents a car. So I was like over the moon.
So the great thing there
I think that's the power of the tech, like that peer-to-peer transaction where you don't have like a central authority saying, no, you can't do that like with your own money, sort of thing. So it was really, really amazing to see like all the tech didn't work.
How long, once you sent the Bitcoin from your wallet to the dealer's wallet, how long did it take for the transaction to be accepted by the network and basically to be completed and take the keys for the car?
Well, actually, it was instant because the transaction we did was off-chain, so through a company called CoinJar. We're actually
I'm a customer of CoinJar.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, it's a company that's based in Melbourne. It's an Australian company.
Yeah, really, really cool guys. So yeah, we used that, and that was I found that's the easiest way. Like even my coffee guy in the morning, like I taught him how to use CoinJar just because it's easier and like then you don't have to worry about it. Like you go to some places they're like, oh, it has to be over $10 to use your card. So yeah, I've got like my coffee guy in the morning using CoinJar instead.
So there are physical places that accept Bitcoin for payment, even for like tiny things like a cup of coffee.
Yeah, totally. In fact, I've just got back from Japan, and we did the whole trip on the blockchain because Japan's recognized Bitcoin as a national currency, which has been
national currency.
As the national or one of the national.
So there's a yuan and the yen, and then the Bitcoin.
That's amazing.
And is it taxed like can an employee get paid in Bitcoin and then be taxed on it by government?
Yeah, in fact, that would be a more reasonable way of doing things because, like we were saying before, like it's all transparent. So anything that's on the blockchain, you don't have to go back and audit it later on because it's already sort of happened. And you can get into smart contracts with Ethereum and all the rest of it and see where they're sort of progressing. But I would say it's definitely the way forward to pay employees in Bitcoin. Or an altcoin, cryptocurrencies in general. Like they sort of differ in terms of like the code behind them. Like some of them sort of disregard Satoshi's original code altogether. But essentially they all have blockchains and work relatively the same way.
Okay, we're not a financial podcast, but so steering it back to education. If I wanted to buy an education for my children, which is the best coin currency to invest in? Cryptocurrency.
That's a good question. It's definitely educational.
It's education. Having just looked at the fees, oh my god.
Well, I'm agnostic. So, like we were saying before the podcast, like with different hardware, I try to be as agnostic as possible. With the cloud, we try to be as agnostic as possible, like within the school. So we're obviously using Google Apps, SSO with Office 365 and all different cloud technologies with that. So I've tried to replicate that as much as possible with the blockchain. So yeah, I wouldn't like to sort of just pigeonhole one and say this is the future. I mean, obviously financially, BTC is probably the way forward, but there's hundreds of other cryptocurrencies that offer services. Like one in particular two in particular that I'm really excited about that we've implemented at the school. One's called Storj, so STORJ, and that's essentially like a Dropbox. Have you guys used Dropbox before?
Oh yes.
Yeah. Everyone's kind of using that.
Fanatically.
That's essentially, it's essentially that, but decentralized and on a distributed network. So like the spare hard drive space you have on your computer, you rent it to the network, everything's encrypted, and instead of your data going all the way over to AWS servers in the States or wherever they are, and then back to you, your data is always closest to you and completely secure. So we've actually backed up our school Minecraft server on the storage blockchain. So it's essentially the first Minecraft server on the blockchain. So that's pretty exciting.
Is it encrypted or?
Yeah. So your data is always encrypted and always closest to you. So you own the private keys to it. And actually, the kids have actually set up a hard drive to rent out space back to the network as well.
So how much can you rent out space for?
Different pricing depending on how much space you have, sort of thing. So I think if you go to 1 TB hard drive,
1.5 cents per gigabyte per month.
There you go.
Okay. So it's not.
Do they take Bitcoin?
No. So they've got their own cryptocurrency that.
Really? So so hold on a second. It's a company and they've got their own currency?
Yes.
We're going to go down the rabbit hole of ICOs now. Look at that.
Can I pay in BTC or storage?
Storage, yeah. Well, so the BTC network's kind of separate to that. So the storage network actually launched on a thing called Counterparty, and I think it was Counterparty, and that's what we launched our school coin on as well. So we actually made our own cryptocurrency at the school called Wooranna coin, just to see if we could. It's not actually worth any money, but it was just an exercise to make our own coin. And then storage moved to Ethereum and did like a second ICO, which is initial coin offering, and they're still running on the Ethereum network, I think, for their crypto. But that's just one of the blockchains that we're using at the school. Like there's another one called Steem, so STEEM. So Steem is essentially like a social media platform / YouTube replacement / podcast system replacement, all on the blockchain, where people are incentivized through a cryptocurrency to create meaningful content. So if you go on there, it's all original, well thought out articles and videos and now podcasts. Podcast only is like a couple of weeks ago. They launched DTube on the Steam network. And so that essentially means that your data is immutable, and that's what's most exciting about like the Steam network. Like you control your data, it's immutable, and you can potentially get rewarded for it. So I would suggest actually for this podcast to put it on DTube.
I'm looking at it right now as you speak. So what I start to realize is that the blockchain through what's happening with Bitcoin and the attention that it's getting, it's actually changing whole industries and even governments, because then I can see that there could be potentially a lot of applications for government, corruption and all that. That sounds like government sounds like a perfect application for the blockchain, just because of the issue of transparency. Mm-hmm. It'd be very hard to be corrupt or to engage in corrupt behavior when that everything's exposed. One question that I've got now is back to education. How does all that achieve educational outcomes for students in a school like yours? For example, I can see that your students are becoming very strong in computer science, potentially in understanding how complex networks work, future currencies and things of that sort. But apart from those specific skills, do you think that there's education to be done based on the cryptocurrencies and the blockchain in particular?
Yeah, no, completely. So I think there's multiple levels to it. So there's learning about the technology, so the networking side of it. We've got, I would say, the youngest Cisco class in the world. I've got some year twos doing Cisco at the school, which is insane. But taking that, like the passion for networking and building our networks, and then applying that to blockchain technology, that's quite exciting. Or even just learning about decentralized networks and distributed networks and how they work. That's super exciting. But then there's So say kids are not interested in that, they could still utilize the blockchain. And I would say Steemit is probably the best example. So for our school, like we've got, instead of classrooms, we've got what's called learning communities. So we have like my classroom that I'm sitting in now is called the Enigma Portal. We've got a dragon boat in year 2. We've got a spaceship that's in the year 3 unit, like a castle in prep. So it's pretty cool. But these learning communities, like and CoderDojo and robotics and all the rest of it, I've set them all up with Steemit accounts. So basically, I got the idea from a school called Sidwell Friends over in the States. It's the school that Obama's kids went to. And went to go and visit back in 2015, and they had up I think it was in the year 4 unit. Really cool school. Like they had like Secret Service outside the door and stuff. I was like, this is awesome. Dragged my girlfriend. She hated it, but yeah. So they had this Twitter wall in the year, I think it was the year 4 unit, and they get the kids to handwrite out tweets, and then the best one, or like what the kids sort of voted to be the best one, they put on their Twitter page for the school, and then see how many thumbs up they got or how many likes they got, and sort of teaching like digital citizenship through actually posting stuff online.
I think that's easy because I think whichever has got the cutest cat gets the most thumbs up. That's easy.
That's right. Yeah, true. But so I was thinking it's sort of taking that to the next level. So doing something similar to that, but do it on the blockchain. So do it on the Steemit network. So instead of getting a thumbs up or a like, potentially a learning community or a classroom. So it just doesn't have to be our school. Like any school could do this. In fact, I think I've set up 2 other schools, one in New Zealand and one in Sydney, with their own accounts as well. But potentially like teaching entrepreneurship through writing meaningful content. So say the students come together and do a really cool project, they can put it on the blockchain, and the blockchain or Steemit blockchain community can pay that classroom Steam dollars for whatever they've done. So what they can do with that, there's a website called Living Room of Satoshi, and that's an Australian group, and they actually let you use Steam dollars and a whole bunch of other cryptos to pay your bills or do bank transfers. So essentially what you could do is have your students creating content and then buying things for their classrooms. So say you wanted a 3D printer or you need more 3D printer filament, or anything you can think of. You want a new robot or a new Lego for the classroom. You can actually teach entrepreneurship without having to make real money, if that kind of makes sense.
Yeah. So in other words, apart from the specific technologies involved in blockchain, there's a lot of other social aspects to it. Entrepreneurship is a big one. It comes out first, but also, social skills like openness, for example, transparency, like those concepts, I don't think they're obvious to kids. I think they're not obvious to adults very often, but through this blockchain technology with examples, you can actually teach fairly complicated concepts, advanced concepts to very young kids.
Well, the other thing that we've done recently is with the NEM blockchain, which is really exciting technology, is come up with our own voting system. So basically what we've done, I'll give you the background. I think it was about this time last year, a philanthropist from the States by the name of Andrew Kwan came to our school and visited for the day. I was working one day out of the week at the blockchain center in the city. Actually, I was volunteering at the time through their Google Apps, be their Google Apps admin. And yeah, basically someone said, go and check out Kieran's school. Like they're doing some pretty cool stuff, pretty innovative. So he came to our school, stayed the day, stayed for CoderDojo, and unbeknownst to me, he had been to 200 schools across the States, donating to each school, hardware, whatever he could. Essentially, he had been mining BTC in the early days and had sort of set out to try and fix education on his own. So he came to our school for the day and he said, dude, this is probably the best school I've ever been to in my life. Like, if I can take this, if I can pick this school up and bring it to America or bring it to South Korea, where his family's from. This would fix everything.
It's probably going to be a bit difficult to take the whole school to Korea.
Well, just to finish that story. So Andrew saw our school and he donated 21 bitcoins to our school.
Whoa.
So yeah.
Okay,
So
how much is that? How much is that in dollars? One bitcoin right now is $7,500 Australian. I think. Is it seven?
Yeah.
$7,200. So yeah.
Yep. Yeah, it's a very right. So there you go. We've sort of spent it before it went. Well, spent a lot of it before it went up. But,
maybe you should keep those bitcoins. Don't spend them.
Well, it was sort of to demonstrate that we could build our Steam Center. So we're building a Steam Center out of shipping containers in the school. So Bitcoin has funded the majority of the hardware going into that Steam Center. So, but what we wanted to do, going back to the voting thing, that's why I sort of had to just go through that story a little bit. With that 21 BTC, instead of me being like an oligarch sort of saying, we need this hardware or that hardware, like I'm in control of, the technology at the school, I thought, let's let the kids and staff have a say. So we used, and that's actually how we sort of created our first cryptocurrency, Wooranna Coin, trying to do our own voting system. The NEM Foundation came along and they've set us up with a voting system on their blockchain. So we broke down like what sort of stuff we'd need for a Steam Center. So some augmented reality, virtual reality, some makerspace equipment like 3D printers, Android tablets, like all really well thought out hardware. Broke that down, and then everyone got to have a say, and we actually voted on the blockchain for what hardware to spend the BTC on. So many applications for blockchain tech, and like so many layers to the learning that it's. So
how does voting work, though? I can understand a Bitcoin has a certain value that floats compared to other currencies, but how does voting work? I can't understand the mechanics behind it.
Is it a putting your money where your mouth is kind of thing, or is it?
Well, you can actually do it on a test net, so you can set it up, and that's what we were looking at originally. But the NEM Foundation actually set up a bot to send us enough XEM, so their own cryptocurrency attached to the NEM network, and basically. That was the big thing that we're coming up against. Like, how do you do a voting system without having to pay for a transaction? So they've kind of covered the costs for us to do that on the live network. And they've actually donated 2 nodes for us to build at the school. And those Chrome tablets that I showed you before, they've actually donated 4 of them. So we have like voting tablets that the kids can take around and nodes that authenticate with all these thousands of other nodes around the world on their blockchain. There's other stuff you can do with the NEM network, but the voting thing is what I was most excited about.
Now, with the voting, is it anonymous voting, or is it public voting?
Well, it's transparent but anonymous, so you can see. In fact, we've done 2 votes so far that have been internal, so you can actually set them up sort of privately, so they're contained within the school, but the results are public. And then there was an external vote, so the NEM community actually voted on whether or not they wanted to donate the hardware to the school. So that was like really cool to see like both sort of voting systems and how they work. So obviously, like they said, the network said yes, donate enough of their cryptocurrency for us to buy some hardware for the school to set up the nodes and all the rest of it. So yeah, two sort of different. So one's totally public, one's private, but all the results are public. But the actual transactions, like the same way we would do a transaction on the BTC network, is the same way would happen on the NEM network.
As you're talking again, I'm just browsing the internet and I came across a website called MiVote, so that's mivote.org.au, and it's blockchain voting. And apparently there's vote number 4 open now for anybody that wants to vote and decide about Australians' housing policy priorities. So it looks like that's like a grassroots democracy movement where citizens, people vote on issues that are important to them, I suppose, as a way to persuade politicians. But because this system is based on blockchain, you could say that it's totally transparent and reliable. Is that the idea behind it?
Completely. Well, I think that's the way it's going to move. So we'll have voting systems. So instead of voting for, trusted third parties, and that's what we do at the moment. So that's what, like, so you know how we're sort of using the example of like Facebook as that centralized network, like the current structure for, say, the government, that's a centralized network as well. So that's a trusted third party. Trusted third parties can be good and kind of work, or they can be really bad, like Stalin. Or
they could be good now and then go bad later.
Exactly. With a distributed network, with the blockchain, everyone has an equal say and it's fair. And I think that's the key. Like, actually, it was really interesting. I brought a suitcase back from Japan just filled with stuff that I bought for the kids. It's like old Nintendo controllers and like all crazy stuff. But there was, like, they had a price tag on there, so like 100 yen. It's about $1. And the kids are like, "Is that $100?" And it's like, "No, it's $1." But it was a really good example of showing how, like, with Bitcoin, it's fair for everybody. So we were like,
international
it's 100 there, but $1 here. Does that sound fair? Like, no. Like, well, with Bitcoin, it's the same in both countries. Like, you don't have to change between one and the other. So I think that's the key to it, fairness.
So I was thinking, let's say that we've got a teacher listening or a parent listening, and they are quite intrigued by this whole idea and the future of it. Like, there's a lot of promises in it. What can they do, or where can they look for information or guidance to get involved in blockchain education? Let's say step number 1, what would that be like?
I think probably the best for a teacher. I think it can get quite complex. I mean, the Blockchain Centre in Melbourne, they do workshops weekly, and they have some really, really good educators in there. I think if you're in Melbourne, that's the spot to check out. There's a lot of stuff online. Really, like for myself, like I've been setting up a website to teach people the fundamentals of blockchain. So it's blockchaineducation.school. So I've just got like a few different things on there that sort of teach people or try to run people through. But it's really, I think you can only spark an interest because it's so complex and there's so many different moving parts.
So you need patience when you get started.
I think so. Yeah. I think so. And I think because we're all sort of used to these like hierarchical, centralized systems, it's hard to break out of that. Like we're all, it's like it is a lot easier to just go, oh, someone else is looking after it. Like when it comes to security in particular, like you were saying, you have one Bitcoin. Mm-hmm. Have you got that? Have you looked into security for that at all?
I've got a couple of Bitcoins, and I've got them hosted on a hard disk with backups. I self-host them.
Okay, so you've got them like in cold storage?
They are cold, yeah. Yeah, the computer is turned off.
Air-gapped.
And I turn it off every now and then to make sure it works.
Yeah. So that's, I mean, there's that's a whole other aspect. You can get like the security, like just teaching the fundamentals of security with the blockchain, because it comes down to personal responsibility. And I mean, I've learned that the hard way countless times. Like, you know, had BTC on USBs and like lost it and all sorts of things. And yeah, more times than I'd like to count, to be honest. But it's good. I still believe in the tech, and I think it comes down to the individual. Like, you need to be responsible for your own crypto, and that or for yourself, really. And that's the way the world's moving.
It is.
It is. I think with technology, it's not really up to us anymore. Technology's got the momentum that is changing every industry from different perspectives, different angles. The Bitcoin seems to be one major innovation that is changing a lot of things, almost like the internet, I'd say, how the internet changed and re-engineered a lot of industries. And I think the Bitcoin, the blockchain technology seems to have a similar effect. So just on its own, I think it's worth learning about in a school setting.
So what subjects are you actually inserting this into?
Everything, pretty much. So we've got everything that I do with the kids anyway. So I've got teach Minecraft classes. We do on a Minecraft server. It's hosted we host it, and we've got I think 8 different schools on there from around the world. So actually, if you go to minecraft.woorannaparkps.big.edu.au, you can watch our server in real time, which is pretty cool. That's the 24/7 sort of learning space. So we do everything from literacy to numeracy to coding to geography, history. We've got Te Papa Museum on there. They've been building houses to withstand earthquakes, like simulated earthquakes on a part of the map in there. So everything you think of, we pretty much do through Minecraft. Even some of the Cisco stuff that we've been doing, we've sort of translated into Minecraft, so building networks within Minecraft and that sort of thing. I think between Minecraft, Cisco, and CoderDojo, I try to integrate as much blockchain technology as possible in an agnostic way.
And these are primary kids. That's amazing.
Primary school.
Yeah. Which is actually easier, believe it or not.
Yeah, I can imagine.
Easier teaching a group of kids about blockchain than people my age and older, which is bizarre.
And that's because the older we get, the more accustomed we become to, as you said, hierarchical structures of how there's a central authority for everything, right? It's hard to get rid of that notion.
So how do you go about talking about central authorities, tying this to the curricula?
That's a tough one. Well, I think looking at the philosophy of the school or the raison d'etre of the school, you probably have to have a look at our website and have a look at some of the stuff that's happening here, because we're doing stuff at a university level, but kids studying stuff at a university level that the curriculum doesn't really accommodate. Doesn't accommodate at all. Like you're looking at NAPLAN scores or my score or whatever it is. And again, that's another centralized, trusted third party that we're sort of judging kids on, and our school's trying to move away from that as much as possible. And I think there's if you look at Zhong Jiao, he's a pretty famous educator. He's Chinese American. His big thing at the moment is it's called enhanced human talents. So focusing on what people are talented in instead of worrying about what they're sort of bad at or not so good at, which I find really exciting. So I think that sort of mirrors what we're doing in the school here. So there's kids really doing amazing things, and maybe their handwriting is no good, or they're not that great at maths. But I don't think that sort of matters. Like you focus on their passions, not what their weaknesses.
So make them stronger in what they're strong, instead of worrying about everything else. I think that's where they shine and stand out. It's awesome. Well, we've got so much more to say. I wanted to ask you about Ethereum, but we are out of time. Actually, I'll ask you.
Go for it.
Now, I understand that the blockchain is not something that somebody who's working with Scratch right now will be able to get working with, right, and build a cryptocurrency. But I know there's a technology called Ethereum, which has been built to make that sort of thing a bit easier. Is that right? And if yes, could you tell us a little bit about Ethereum and how perhaps people can use it, say in education?
As a platform.
Yeah.
It's a platform, yeah.
Yeah, totally. I think Ethereum is pretty cool. So essentially you can do smart contracts, and people are running their ICOs on there, so initial coin offerings.
Is that like an IPO?
Yeah, same sort of thing. So basically you have it was a really successful one. Actually, we made Bitcoin.com yesterday, which is really cool. It was bizarre. My mum sent me through an article about Australia, and she didn't read the whole thing, and I was like, oh yeah, this looks interesting. And it was talking about Australia's really advanced with blockchain technology and everything that's happening here. And one of the big ICOs is Power Ledger, which is putting power on the blockchain, so peer-to-peer power between houses. and they've done an initial coin offering using the Ethereum network, and it's been really successful. But down just underneath that, it had Wooranna Park, like the first school in the world to use blockchain technology in education. So I was like, oh, that's really cool. But that's one of the examples of like what you can do with the Ethereum network. So if you learn the language, I forget what it's called, but there's a particular language that Vitalik invented for the Ethereum network. You can actually code do your own ICO.
So it's a programming language. It kind of looks like Python or Java, or maybe simpler than that, but it's specifically written to create smart contracts on Ethereum, right?
That's right.
So hides a lot of the complexity behind it.
Yeah, there is a bit of complexity behind it, but we've actually there was someone at the blockchain center who's I think he's gone back to the UK, but just before he left, like he was looking at doing some ICOs for different companies within Melbourne, and he saw what was happening at the school, so he actually did a video tutorial that actually I'll send you guys a link to it because I'll put it on YouTube.
Yep.
For the kids to actually go through and look at some of the code. So it's quite exciting. But there's for any schools or anyone that wants to look at doing it, like launching their own ICO or using the Ethereum network in a bit of an easier way, there's a site that I just found the other day called coinlaunch.market, and that actually does the hard work for you, sort of thing. So if you have an idea for an ICO that you want to launch, you can do it through that. So I'm going to get the kids to have a look at that as well.
And how do they get distribution? So how do they tell people to buy your coin?
So they've actually got their own platform on here, so you get like a dashboard and it gets publicized through there. But essentially people do their own websites, they write a white paper, so kind of like Satoshi's white paper, people write their own white papers and then try to be as transparent as possible. The only issue I've got with ICOs is there's been like a number of them that have just been cash grabs. So essentially doing kind of the same, I suppose, as the crowdfunding. What's the big crowdfunding?
Kickstarter and Indiegogo.
Yeah, like there was a bunch of Kickstarters that like said, yeah, we can do this. Like there was that cool was it lily pad or something, like it was meant to be like a drone that followed you, and then they were like, oh yeah, that was just a video, we didn't actually know how to make it.
Oh yes.
And they kind of take people's money and so like there's been a few, it's kind of the same sort of thing as that, like people have gone, yeah, we're going to do this on the blockchain, and then haven't kind of followed through, like maybe they don't know what to do, or it's just cash go. So there's a bit of like kind of grossness as well, like to some of the ICOs. But overall, I think it's a positive thing, like anything that's sort of decentralized and or distributed, should I say, and sort of moving forward with the tech, I think it's good.
Kieran, that's fascinating. But I want more. Have you got any more examples of applications of the blockchain? Yeah,
there was a really cool one actually. So I was chatting with the kids just about like the big debate between vaccinations. So like it's pretty controversial. Like people say it causes autism or it doesn't, and whatever. We can kind of do away with that debate altogether by authenticating the like the compounds and the ingredients that go into vaccinations and making that completely transparent on a blockchain. Like simple, overnight sort of things. I thought that was pretty mature, like thinking as well.
Right. Yeah. So what we can do?
I was going to say at my kids' preschool, they're not allowed to go if they're not vaccinated. So they can have their status of being vaccinated or not vaccinated in the blockchain.
Exactly. So there's no question about it. You can't mess around with documentation. But from a research point of view as well, what I'm thinking is that when a child is vaccinated, a note of that, information of that event is put into the blockchain, the age that they were vaccinated, whether they're showing any autism symptoms, and the exact ingredients that were used, or the batch of the vaccine that was used. And then over time, you've got a huge data set that researchers can use and pretty much prove or disprove the theory.
I wonder if anybody's doing the whole quantified self thing as well in the blockchain. Sorry, go on.
It's authenticated data as well. So like at the moment you sort of look at that data and it's kind of like, yeah, okay, where did this come from? Like, is it legit? But if it was all on the blockchain and transparent from the get-go, so like from wherever it's manufactured to injecting whoever it is, and then we're going to get the research after that. If that's all transparent on the blockchain, it's authenticated, so you know that it's real.
Yeah, awesome. Wow, great example. Well, I think we're just about out of time. Let's say that people with a million questions want to ask you those questions and explore more about this technology in education, in finance, in entrepreneurship. Like, there's so many different angles you could look into this. How can they get in touch with you? And yeah,
How many bitcoins per question?
oh yeah, how much? How many bitcoins would you charge?
Now, well, everything, like we have visitors through the school pretty much daily, and I kind of run them, like a lot of educators from all over the world come and visit, and I run them through the gamut of blockchain tech and how it can empower their schools. But we're totally open source, so everything we do is open source for anyone who wants to use it. So if you want to check out the website for the school, it's Wooranna Park, ps.vic.edu.au. If you want to check out my website, it's kdnolan.com, so kdnolan.com.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Yeah, awesome. We're going to have those links in the show notes as well, and because I think they're really worth reading. And I think you mentioned a video on YouTube as well with some instructional information there.
We'll link that up as well.
And some of the other websites that you mentioned, we are also going to include them in for anybody who's interested. Or if you didn't take notes, just visit the show notes and you'll find everything there in one nice place.
And I'll be presenting at EduTech, so I'll be keynoting about the first school on the blockchain there. So if anyone wants to come to that, more than welcome.
So when is that on, and which city?
It's Brisbane. I think it's on June 7th and 8th.
2018. Yeah. All right.
Yeah.
We'll link to that as well.
So EduTech 2018.
I think it's announced already. So I'd really come and watch you, and I think we're probably going to be going to the next one as well.
Awesome. Oh, we'll get to catch up.
No, it's in Sydney. It's in Sydney.
Oh, it's in Sydney. Okay, even better. Even better.
Phew, I was like, oh my gosh, have to Brisbane again.
Well, it's been a real pleasure. I really enjoyed this conversation, and I'd like to follow up again maybe in a few months from now, just to see what else is happening in your world of blockchain education. And I think this area is having a lot of action right now, and things are happening. Not just the price, I mean. Blockchain is exploding all over the world. If Japan has adopted this as a national currency, then there's other countries that will follow, and I'm very, very happy about that. And looking at blockchain voting systems, that's very promising. I think democracy needs that. Not that I'm political, I'm just saying. Well, okay, Kieran, thank you very much for your time. It's been a pleasure.
It's been fantastic, Kieran.
Thanks, guys. We'll talk soon.
That's all for this episode. If you have any questions or suggestions, please send them to our email address, questions@stemiverse.com, and we'd be happy to answer them. Do you want us to interview someone in particular? Let us know. Visit us at Stemiverse.com to get the show notes of every episode. And subscribe on iTunes by searching for the name of our podcast, Stemiverse. That is STEMIVERSE. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next time.